Hello, I'm Justin, and this is A Human in the Loop. And for the last few weeks, I have been posting videos of programs that I've been making in processing. There are a lot of other projects I haven't shared yet. I'm really happy with where my programming is going. And a large part of that is because I'm working with ChatGPT. I have to say that I am enjoying that process. At the same time, I've really been kind of keeping to myself. I'm reading a lot. And I am going to the library a lot. And I'm watching TV shows and media. I'm trying to get some schedules together. Trying to make some new habits for myself, and I want to come to grips with what is likely ADHD. I may be getting a diagnosis for that soon, and I think it's quite likely. Growing up, I was often disciplined or pulled aside because I was disorganized or messy or clumsy. And somehow I think all of these actually are connected to the fact that my attention is often somewhere else. It's often in my own head. I'm imagining things, I'm dreaming, I'm spacing out. And at the same time that I want to start dealing with this diagnosis, I also don't want to dismiss the value of being dreamy or spacey. I think there needs to be some room for that in our lives and in our culture. I think this is especially true for artists. And I'm going to have to build that into the life I have. What else have I been doing lately? I may have made a note somewhere that I am becoming more and more interested in grids. The kinds of places that I spend time on online often include a lot of displays of people's design work or artwork. And somehow I get a little dopamine hit when I see a good grid. And I've started a channel on Arena about grids and layouts. And I'm not sure what I'm doing with it other than the fact that it's kind of an ongoing mood board. But it's also connected to things that I'm trying to do with programming. I feel like the things that I'm working with most are a tool for layouts, another tool for cutting up text, and then I've been doing some things with checkerboard designs, or working with tri-grids or triangle grids that are also a kind of grid tool. And aesthetically, I'm really happy with the sort of image cut-ups that I'm making with the checkerboard designs and with the tri-strips or triangles. I also like the way that I can use a grid and modulate that grid to control color over time and make certain kinds of color effects. That actually leads to another thing that I learned recently about ADD and ADHD, Andrew Huberman. So there's a long video that she released, a podcast about ADHD, where he talks about a lot of things, including the sort of patterns of behavior that ADD people and ADHD people have, and the way that, well, one metaphor that's useful that he used was, if we ask someone to look at sequences of letters and have them, say, click a button when they see a B or a Z, what tends to happen is the first letter they tend to be very good at, but the second one is hard to do at the same time. And that's because there is a kind of multitasking that happens. And what happens with multitasking is that after we do something successfully, our consciousness kind of wants to give us a little dopamine reward. And, it's like our attention dilates. We blink. And, one of the metaphors that Huberman uses is that ADHD or ADD people, they have a lot of consciousness blinks. And that sounds about right to me. I feel like most of my thinking is a kind of avant-garde cut up. There's all this sort of blinking or changing the channel. And there's a part of that that I think is aesthetically beautiful, but it can also be rather draining. And going back to modulation, which is what led me to thinking about Andrew Huberman, was he talked about how medications for ADD and ADHD often work, and he makes a differentiation between medications and techniques that modulate a situation and those that mediate. And the mediation tends to be a bigger kind of thing. It might be like imposing a grid on something, whereas modulation is something that you do to reinforce or you build on something that's already set up. And that differentiation, and I might be somewhat inaccurate, but I think I have that straight. The difference between mediation and modulation. I feel like I've spent a lot of time making programs to mediate data, to mediate colors or images, but sometimes I want to modulate it by bringing in something like an easing function, something that rounds the corners or kind of bases things out. So my subscriber count has grown to about 45, which would be a large class if it was a number of students. And I'm still very interested in hearing from people that watch my videos. I'm curious if people would be more interested in these monologues, more of certain kinds of programs that I'm doing, or perhaps even tutorials. I'm open to any of those. If you could leave a like or subscribe, that would be much appreciated. I submitted my ballot today. I wanted to go ahead and do that a bit early. I wish I could be that early with other things that I do. It's odd that one can procrastinate things that one really wants to do. And I'm doing quite a bit of that lately. I'm trying to work on a UX project that has a lot of interesting possibilities, and I need to just get going with that. In comparison to that, or searching for certain opportunities lately, I find that I am immersing myself in programming with ChatGPT. I do think that I've really developed a good working relationship with that tool. And I hope that that will be useful in the future. But the other thing that I really want to improve is my own concentration. And I guess that could be a number of things. Perhaps with help from a counselor connected to ADD and ADHD, I can improve some of my concentration and connection with that. I also want to develop a meditation practice again and read physical books. I think that actually reading physical books is definitely a very different kind of attention than reading online or scanning online. When I'm online, most of my attention mode is scanning, and I think that that's probably true for most people. The online environment conditions us for quicker bites, not long, slow reads. Back to talking about growing up with ADD or ADHD behaviors, one of the things that seems symptomatic of ADD is making stacks of papers and objects and things like that. And I have even described to myself or other people that my art making is often taking one stack and moving it over to another stack. And another way of thinking about it years ago for me was the idea of moving bits of information. And that's an information science style of thinking. But I like how moving bits of information can also become a pawn, because bits of information can also be moving. And for me, if a thing is going to be meaningful, it has to move me. Bits of information that don't move me generally are ignored. And I think that that's a useful insight. This video may be more stitched together than usual. It's going to be more of a montage. And I think that montage reflects more of the kind of blinks of attention that I have become used to over the course of my life. I think that I learned how to cope with that style of thinking. But I'd be very interested in other ways of thinking and other tools that I might use. And I'm going to leave this there. If any of my viewers are ADHD, ADD, or know someone who is, I'd love to chat about that. It's something that I think that it's taken me a long time to try to grapple with in a way that is meaningful and large scale. And that might be one of the most important things that I'm trying to do right now.